Well, the Big Easy wasn't so easy, but with a ton of heart and determination and a gutsy call from our head coach, Jack Del Rio, we come home in a three-way tie for the AFC West. Falcons at Raiders is our topic tonight, and this is the will to win. All right, tonight's show is broken up into 5 segments. In segment number 1, we talked to Ricky Whitmer from the Most Valuable podcast. In segment number 2, Pete sits down with former Raiderette Nicole Rodriguez. In segment number 3, I sit down with Mike Yoakum, who was essential to getting Kenny Stabler elected into the Hall of Fame. Segment number 4, we send it over to Coach Ted for the game film breakdown. And in our last segment, Pete breaks down this week's pick'ems. Let's get started. All right, let's look at last week's highlights, shall we?
Spring drop in the end zone. What's next? Coach will go on the sideline. Come on. Big shots. Touchdown. Time for Sean Smith. Touchdown. Raiders. Off the check for Rashard. Straight ahead back up. Breaks free. Oh, he may go. He's gone. Catch it today. 10. Touchdown. Raiders. Jalen Rashard goes 75 yards. Second base, Condo will snap left for home. He's got the lead. Get out of New Orleans. With Big Easy, with a
Welcome, Raider Nation, to tonight's show. Joining us in studio today is going to be the co-founder of the Most Valuable Podcast, Ricky Whitmer. Ricky Whitmer, welcome to The Will to Win.
Oh, thank you guys for having me on. I can't wait to talk about some Raider football.
No, absolutely, Ricky. We're going to start off by asking you a little bit about the Most Valuable Podcast. Could you tell us a little bit about what it is you do over there and where and what the content is?
Oh, certainly. We're a group of 6 of us just got together, said, hey, you know what, we want to talk about sports. Didn't really, at the time, see many of the sports kind of commentary that we thought we provide with our entertainment. Decided to do it. We talk basketball, football, every kind of sport, but the most important thing we love is football, and each and every week we love just breaking down football games and getting into the nitty-gritty on mostvaluablepodcast.com.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, we've just found you guys, and we're looking into it, and you guys are doing a great job. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Raider football team as well as our opponent, the Atlanta Falcons, excuse me. So what could you tell me? What is some of your insight and your thoughts about our Raider offense and how it can match up with the Atlanta Falcon defense?
Well, the thing that I loved, and this isn't just because I had Derek Carr on my fantasy team this week, but the best thing I loved is just the kind of connection that Derek Carr had with Amari Cooper when you guys played the Saints and pulled out the 1-point victory, because Jack Del Rio's the man and knows how to coach a football game. But you had Cooper over 100 yards, no touchdowns, but he got most of the targets from this Raider offense. And I think you could kind of see a little bit of what the Bucs did and say, okay, we can have some success, because if you look at what Jameis Winston decided to do, he targeted Mike Evans most of the day, got a touchdown just under 100 yards from Evans, and I look at Amari Cooper, I say, hey, you got more yards, maybe you can exploit this Falcon defense more than Mike Evans did.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So what would you say, Ricky, would be maybe the weakest point of the Atlanta Falcon defense that maybe Derek Carr should try to exploit?
I would say the corners. I mean, watching that game, you saw Mike Evans. He really averaged about 20 yards per catch. And if you could get Amari Cooper going deep, he had over 20 yards against the Saints per catch and reception. So really, I just expect, hey, attack the deep ball, attack it early, and then once you get those kind of safeties and defensive backs creeping back, then you can hit them with the 1-2 punch with Richards and Murray in vice versa order, because Murray's the starter out of the backfield.
All right, I've got a question for you there, Ricky. Let's flip it around a little bit. This defense last week struggled. I mean, we were beat over the top. Our linebackers were kind of getting run out of place. And our defensive line outside of Bruce Irvin didn't get a lot of pressure on Drew Brees. Now, Brees is one of the best at getting rid of the football, so I don't think that'll be the case this week. But looking at this Atlanta Falcon offense, what are some of the things that you think will present our defense the biggest problems?
I really think it's the same kind of problem that you guys just faced, because you talked about it. You know, Drew Brees isn't playing for the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan doesn't have that same release that Drew Brees has. However, you look at what Willie Snead and Brandon Cooks were able to do to that Raider defense, both having well over 100 yards, both having a touchdown. Cooks even scored 2 of them. And I look at Atlanta, and it's like, you know what? They always have Julio Jones, who's always a deep ball threat. But now they got Mohamed Sanu, who actually looked serviceable in his first game with the Atlanta Falcons. And actually, just saying serviceable, I think that's kind of a slap in the face to what Sanu did. He was even better than serviceable, something that the Falcons have been kind of looking for since Roddy White was kind of on the decline, was that number 2 receiver to be on the opposite side of Julio Jones. So if the Raiders want to win in this one, you don't have to worry too much about the run game, because Devonta Freeman only had 11 carries in the last game, only had 20 yards, didn't really show us anything. It's really kind of matching up against Sanu and now Julio Jones.
And what about that offensive line? I mean, in your opinion, what would you say would be the keys of victory would be for the Raiders?
I would use the run game to kind of help the offensive line. I mean, you saw Latavius Murray only had 59 yards, but I think it was a good 59-yard game. He even had a touchdown. I mean, I mentioned Jalen Richard, and it's kind of like you're probably sitting there going, well, Ricky, he only had 3 touches, and you're only saying his name because he had that explosive run that went all the way for a touchdown. But that's that's what the Raiders need. They need that one big play, whether it's going to be from the run game like you got from Richard last week, or if it's going to be from the passing game, Carr hitting Cooper for a big one. That's going to really help out this offensive line, because if Derek Carr just has to drop back and hold the ball, then that's going to give him more time for that Falcon defense to get to him and maybe plaster him.
Fantastic, Ricky. Well, I want to ask you this then. This will be our last question for you this evening. What is your prediction? How do you see this game playing out this Sunday? You got the Raiders or the Falcons winning this one?
I got to go with Raider Nation. And this is not just, I'm on will to win. I got to pick the Raiders. It's also not, hey, Ricky, you got Derek Carr on your fantasy team. Of course you're going to pick the Raiders. I just wasn't impressed with what the Falcons showed me last week. I mean, Jameis Winston, yeah, he made that. You could see he's making that next step with the training that we saw and heard about from the offseason. But the whole Atlanta team just did not impress me. And I think this Raider team, it all goes back to what Jack Del Rio said after the game. I was watching NFL Red Zone. They did a little live look-in. And he said, you know what, last year was when we learned to compete. This year is where we learn to win games. And that's what I think the Raiders are going to do. In my preseason pick'em, I had them as the 6th seed in the AFC at 10-6. I don't think that's changing. It might be a close one, it might not, but I'm going to sit here and go 35-24 Raider Nation.
Excellent, Ricky. Excellent, Rick. Well, we really appreciate your time, Ricky. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Ricky Whitmore from the Most Valuable Podcast. Ricky, could you go ahead and let our audience know where they could find you?
Oh, sure. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, it's just plain and simple, at Ricky Widmer. And if you like what you see from mostvaluablepodcast.com, you can hit us up on Twitter at Most Valuable Podcast.
Amazing. Well, Ricky, thank you once again for joining the Will to Win, and you have a great evening.
You too. Thank you for having me.
All right, Raider Nation. Now we're going to send it back to the LA studios with Pete.
Our next guest is a former Oakland Raider cheerleader and also the owner of NRPR Group, Nicole Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us today on the Will to Win.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be a guest today.
All right, well, fantastic. Well, we sure do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? It's always great to talk to a Raiderette, and we're really excited to hear about your experiences and the time that you had with the Raiders. But first, can you give us just a little background on you, for the fans? Things like, your school history, were you a cheerleader, how you became a Raiderette, and what made you decide to become one of football's fabulous ladies?
Oh, one of my favorite stories to share. So what a lot of people don't know is that actually becoming a Raiderette was the very first goal I ever set for myself, and I was 8 years old. It was my first year cheerleading. My mom signed me up when I was 8, and it was literally one of those things where I would watch football with my grandfather and my aunt and uncles, and really just found a love for the sport. I found that their passion was infectious. And so I would watch football, and I saw these beautiful women dancing on the field, and I just thought, wow, I'd love to be one of those one day. How cool would that be? And, my aunt, she got to a point to where she asked me, because my mom signed me up for cheerleading. She said, okay, honey, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a Raiders cheerleader. I didn't know the term Raiderettes at that point, but she constantly reminded me of that. So I actually was a cheerleader from the age of 8 all the way up through 18. So middle school, high school, I was the first varsity cheerleader at my high school from freshman year all the way to senior year. Like, that's how passionate I was about it. And thankfully my talent was recognized. But it was just something that I absolutely loved to do. And in college, I didn't cheer in college because I wanted to stay super focused on graduating within 4 years and really just honing in on my major, which was public relations. And when I graduated from college, I also became a mom right away. And it's funny, I never forgot that dream. I started journaling in the 6th grade, and I remember reading an old journal after I had my daughter and was just like, well, you know, I'm reading the dreams of this little girl from the 6th grade, and why can't I still have that? Why can't I still go after that goal and get after it? And so I hit the gym really hard. So anyone who says you can't bounce back after having a kid, that's not true. I think I got in better shape after I had my daughter than I ever was, and I decided to go for it. But I also, I graduated with a degree in PR. I started in enterprise software because naturally that's what you do in the Bay Area. But my passion for the Raiders and for football drove me to take a chance to actually do PR for them. I actually had to take a step back and join them as an intern with no guarantee of a job. So I left a paid salaried job to go work for the Raiders and start over as an intern. But you know what I told my boss at the time when I was interviewing was, look, you're gonna find that out of all of these interns that you have, especially the guys, I probably know more about this team than they do, and you're not gonna wanna let me go. And that confidence, he was like, all right, kid, let's see what you can do. So he gave me an internship in the PR department. And right when I kind of got that, I also let him know, look, I hope this doesn't affect anything, but I'd really like to try out for the team. At that point, Patty Herrera, who I adore and love to death, she actually worked in-house and was a Raiderette at the same time. And I thought, well, she's amazing. And if she could do both, maybe I could do both. And, you know, I just said, I'm not expecting any special treatment. No one in the front office was judging Raiderette, so it was basically separate. So I was like, well, if I'm going to go big, then I'm just going to go now and give it a shot. And so I was already a PR intern. I decided to try out, had been working out up until that point, and I made it my first try. There were 700 girls that tried out that year because it was the year right after the Super Bowl. So it was extremely competitive, but I just went in with the confidence knowing that I love the team, still love the team to this day. And I think that passion kind of came through in my dancing, in the interviews, and the whole process. So there were 10 new rookies that were chosen that year, and the rest of the girls had made it back. So I was one of 10 newbies, and it's something that I'm incredibly proud of. And yeah, it's still, I can still feel, you know, the nerves from back then. I'm glad I went through with it.
Well, tell us what is it like for somebody that doesn't know what it's like, for the average fan? What was it like running out there the first time and being in front of all of those fans? I mean, did you have butterflies? What was the feeling like?
Oh, it's so hard to describe. It's an overwhelming energy where you are just feeling the energy from these amazingly passionate fans. And it's almost like if you picture the Coliseum where, you know, all the fans are up here and you're on the field and seeing the players on the field and knowing what's going to happen, knowing that you're standing right there and you're lining up, knowing that we're going to do the national anthem, and you're feeling it, and it's a sense of pride. Because, I mean, the Raider fans, there's nothing like it. You know, there's just nothing like that group. We're, I don't know, a different breed of fans, I think. And so to feel all of that, and it's warm, but it's energizing, and it's awesome. And I promise you, I had tears rolling down my face as soon as I stepped on the field and we were getting ready to do the national anthem. Because at that point, it was like, I did it. I made it. You know, and being able, I think for me too, I'm getting emotional just remembering it, but it was a dream come true, you know, not just making the team, hitting that goal, but in that moment, realizing what it was all about. Oh God, it's one of the best feelings I've ever been able to experience in my life.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, you brought up the national anthem, and this wasn't something that I was going to bring up, but since you brought it up, it's a big topic in the news, and I just was wondering if you had any thoughts on what was going on with the whole Colin Kaepernick and a lot of different people that are showing solidarity with him now, kneeling on the sidelines and things like that. What are your thoughts and opinions on that? Because you are in PR, is that something that you would have recommended to a client if they came to you, or is it something that you would have said?
Not.
Go ahead,
That's
explain.
a great question. I would not have, and the reason for that is, really take a step back and look at the history of what the national anthem was created for. Right? It's something to help us all feel, yes, proud to be in America. But if you look at what's happening in other countries, and really, if you take a look at our country, it's not that bad. There's a ton of opportunity. There always has been in America. And I think that's what makes this nation beautiful. Do we have our issues? Yes. But this is still the land of the free, the home, of the brave, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah.
But that is something that all of us who live here should absolutely always feel proud to sort of recognize. And I think the fact that, things are happening right now, but why discount our great history and, the people who fought for our freedom, the people who continue to fight for us and our freedom. It really, to be honest, brings a sense of almost ignorance to our country's history and a disrespect to a lot of what has happened that's good in this country. And I certainly hope that there are not more players and teams that follow suit with Colin Kaepernick. I would never have recommended that.
What type of PR stuff did you do for the Raiders? Like, what were you involved in terms of working for the franchise itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of those, with Dolby, Plantronics, Yahoo, those companies, I actually worked for an amazing agency in the Bay Area called Voce, and through Voce is where I represented these companies and worked with them on strategy and stuff. So, but with the Raiders, it was different. It wasn't an agency; it was in-house. You're right. And I would say the best part of it was, coming in, just starting off as an intern. We had to do a lot of interviews with the players and the coaches to get stuff together for the website, to write stories that could be in the Game Day magazine, to pull together stories that could be pitched to the media. So really information gathering, and it was an old school way of doing PR, which is amazing, right? I'm sure now it's a little bit changed, but I think coming from the high-tech world where there's a lot of tools to help you sort of do what you do, and then going back more into the older school way of doing PR, I really found a marriage of the two, and I was able to come in and really help storytell and shape different things. And, for example, just transcribing a lot of interviews helped me to really hone in on, a messaging technique that I have in my company now that I wouldn't have learned had I only, sort of done the technology PR side of things. So it was great because I got to uncover some really great stories. Like Sebastian Janikowski at that time didn't have a great sort of reputation on the outside. He was, breaking things. He was very new to the Raiders. And I just thought, you know what, if people really knew what Seabass was like, he's a very gentle and nice person. Like, I did an interview with him and I thought, you know what, if I could really help the organization see that we can proactively position some of these players in much softer light, in better light that's more reflective of them and not just, what the media is catching on to, we can actually show the great essence that is, part of the Raiders with each of these guys. So I did a bunch of digging. I did a personal one-on-one with Sebastian Janikowski and uncovered a lot of great things about his history, his childhood, and I started pitching his not childhood, but like his college paper and his hometown. And I was like, did you guys know what a great hero that you guys have out here? And here's a little bit about his background and more about his personality. Don't pay attention to all that other stuff. There is a real person behind, this. And so I actually, because of that, was asked to be a player development coordinator. So I got to work with all the rookies who were coming in and media train them and help uncover what their stories were all about. Welcome to the Raiders. We know this is all brand new, but what is it about you that really makes you tick, and what should fans and outside people know? And that first year that Robert Gallery was with us, that was my first rookie class, and I got to work with Coach Brown doing that, and that was pretty much how my role evolved. And it was great, because I felt like at that point, because of my background in tech and my background in PR already, I got to bring something a little bit different to the Raiders, and it's something I'm very proud of, that now kind of has shaped what my agency does now.
Yeah, speaking of your agency, real quickly, I know that your agency takes social media very seriously. Do you have any tips? There's a lot of people out there that watch our show that do their own channels, that do Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube, podcasting, different types of things like that. Do you have any advice for those types of people in terms of how important social media could be for their brand?
Sure. Yeah. So social media, it's not going away. It's something that I think it's been around, right, for quite some time, but I think now everyone is starting to really understand the importance of it. And I think before social media and before the internet, people would get a feel for a company or a brand or a person by looking at the essence of advertisements, other marketing things, and PR, things that they would read in the media. And now people have more channels to tell their story and help people understand who they are in their own terms. So that's a really, really cool thing to be able to do, but you have to take it seriously. And even if you're like, well, a lot of my fans are, I don't know, maybe you're a B2B business. Well, people don't look at us on Facebook. Yes, but they expect you to be there. It's an image thing. It's almost like, are you checking the boxes? Are you making sure that there's energy there? And if there's someone there to converse with, you should simply be there. I think that things in social media are evolving. I think people are figuring out how to build their own communities and funnel those communities from Facebook and Instagram and all of that stuff into things like their website. And it's really neat to see where social media is evolving to. But as a business owner, whatever, you should all know that social media isn't going away. So don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Take it one day at a time, and know you're not going to go from 0 to 1 million followers overnight, unless you cheat, which some people do by followers, and I do not believe in that. It's one of those things where you want to organically grow conversations on each of these platforms, because then people are there for real, because they want to be there, and you can own the conversations there. So like, how cool is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked earlier about, knowing more about this football team, and obviously you're still a fan of the Raiders. What do you think about the direction that this team is going in right now? New coaching staff, new players like Carr, Matt, Cooper, the guys that they've brought in. Do you see this team as having turned a corner?
Absolutely. I love, just our first, game of the season a couple days ago, just seeing that chemistry on the field. Derek Carr has been on the team now 3 years. And, when I was with the Raiders, we still had Rich Gannon, who I adore. I think the world of him. He's a great leader. And people don't really understand the impact that a quarterback has on the team. A lot of the times they're the glue, and that chemistry with the coach has to be good. So I think Del Rio I think he's awesome. I'm really, really happy with what we're doing on the coaching side of things. And I think the chemistry is finally really coming together. And I think, Amari is awesome. And I think his chemistry with Derek is great. So I look forward to seeing, what that's going to sort of uncover. But I actually think that we have a great chance to be in the playoffs this year. I think the Raiders are coming out from, just a long stint of not having the right quarterback, the right coach. You know, we've had a lot of turnover, but now it seems like we have the right fit on both of those very important sides. And I think that that's going to start playing out on the field.
So tell me, Nicole, if people were interested in getting a hold of you for PR, social media, you obviously have ways to for people to get a hold of you. Can you tell the people out there how they might contact you?
Sure, of course. So you can go to our website. That's nrprgroup.com. And there's an email there, info@nrprgroup.com. We check that religiously to make sure that we're on top of everything. You can also find me on social media, Nicole RPR, across the board. So Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, you name it. You do a search for Nicole RPR, all one word. You'll find me. That's my brand. For the company, you would look under NRPR Group across the board. And again, that's branded on all the important channels: Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram.
All right, fantastic. Well, we thank you so much again for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk with us. We really do appreciate that. Are there any other last words you might have for the Raider Nation?
No, just win, baby. That's it.
Just win, baby. All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you again for coming on. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Okay, folks, we're going to be going out to break now, but when we come back, the Oakland Knight will be interviewing Mike Yoakum and his petition to get Kenny Stabler into the Hall of Fame. We'll be right back.
You can hate the man's team, but don't hate the man. Fans Against Violence. Keep it at home.
What's cracking, Violator?
What's up with you, baby? A-Bomb? Pleasure, brother.
Good to meet you, my
Pleasure.
man.
Pleasure's mine.
Let me explain something to all of you. I'm the biggest Raider hater on the planet, but I love this man. Without rivals, this stuff isn't any fun. If you got to get violent, don't be involved with our game. Don't.
Thank you.
Don't go to games. Don't go to bars. Don't do nothing. Because you know what? It's all right for me to hate his team. If I didn't, he wouldn't respect me. However, ain't no way I can hate somebody this awesome. Here's to you, brother.
Same to you, brother.
Fans Against Violence.
Keep it at home.
Salute.
Yeah.
Boom.
And I'm bound to keep on riding. And
Mike Yoakum, welcome to the Will to Win.
Hey, it's my pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me on. Always an honor to talk about Kenny.
All right, Mike. Could you tell us a little bit how this all started, how you got involved and created this petition to get Kenny into the Hall of Fame?
Sure. It's a bit of a long story. I've been a Raiders fan since the early 70s, huge fan of Kenny. Was sorely disappointed, like a lot of Raider fans, when he was traded away. Looked for the next big thing to happen for him, obviously, which would have been getting into the Hall of Fame. He was denied a number of times. Finally, after a long period of time, I just literally could not take that anymore, and decided to look into what I might be able to do to help that process. Having really no experience in these matters, had no idea if what I was doing would have any effect, could possibly have any effect, but settled on a petition, and we kicked that off in August of 2014, and undertook a social media drive. That's the means these days to get word out, and established Twitter, Facebook, all sorts of whatever method I could think of, and ultimately we ended up with 6,500 signatures, and along the way I was on Ron Borges radio program, the Talk of Fame program, and was able to share a little bit with them, pointed some folks to the petition, and on down the road, after I had closed the petition, I was assured by a couple of the senior selection committee voters that all of the voters were aware of the petition and that it had some effect. And so I'm eternally grateful that even if it was a very small effect, I'm grateful that it did have some effect ultimately on their decision.
Excellent. You also got connected with the Stabler family. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how you got connected?
Early on in the petition drive, and after establishing a Twitter account, which I had never delved into social media much at all prior to this petition drive, I came across Kendra on Twitter, and I sent her a private message, and she was gracious enough to respond, and we gradually struck up a relationship over time, and I never would have imagined, again, at the onset of the petition, that things would have gone the way that they did, but she now refers to me as her brother from another mother, so we've got a great relationship. All of the Stabler family members that I have had the pleasure of meeting have just been fantastic people. They do their father proud, they really do.
Now that Kenny actually made it to the Hall of Fame, how do you feel?
It was a mixed bag. Of course, there was the utter elation of justice finally being done. The sports writers, and I really believe it was the effort of a few influential sports writers that kept Kenny out. The utter elation of him finally being in and justice being done, the legacy of the NFL being set right in regard to Kenny and his contribution to the game. And then, of course, there was a great deal of sadness that accompanied it because he wasn't there to enjoy the moment with us. And, I urge the NFL and the Hall of Fame to take another look at this election process. They need to get some things right and get some of these guys in their living years and make sure that justice is done by these fellas that contributed so much to the game as we know it today.
Excellent. Well, we know that you were able to make the trip to Canton to see Kenny Stabler's bust be revealed, and you also got to meet the Stabler family. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience and what it was like?
Yeah, it was magical to be there with the family, Kendra, Kim, Marissa, Alexa, Ken's sister, Carolyn, all just fantastic people, all of their extended family. It was fantastic. Got to meet the likes of Ted Hendricks, Willie Brown, Raven Chester, Fred Bolitnikoff, Pete Banaszak, just a whole host of Raiders, both Hall of Famers and players, great players from over the years, and it was really something special. And of course, with Favre going in and mentioning Kenny twice, paying great respect and homage to him in his acceptance speech, of course, really topped things off, made it a special event all the way through and through.
Fantastic, Mike. Fantastic. Well, there's a lot of Raiders that should be in the Hall of Fame. Cliff Branch, Jim Plunkett, Tom Flores, just to name a few. Do you know of any other petitions out there?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Kenny, frankly, was the only, and I don't mean this to sound bad, but he was the only Oakland Raider player, only football player that I would put the kind of energy and effort it takes in. I mean, through the petition drive, I work 50, 55 hours a week at my paying job, and then I was putting another 20 to 30 hours a week in on the petition drive. So, and did that for well over a year, actually a year and a half or so. And it's exhausting, to do it correctly. It takes a lot of work and drive. And but as far as other Raider players go, an acquaintance of mine, John Ernest, currently is leading a drive for the very deserving Cliff Branch, 3-time Super Bowl winner, better numbers by far than some of his contemporaries that are currently in the Hall of Fame, and a very deserving player. You made reference to Tom Flores, an absolute NFL landmark player, first Hispanic player taken in the draft, first Hispanic quarterback, first Hispanic assistant coach, first Hispanic head coach, first Hispanic head coach to win a Super Bowl and won 2 Super Bowls. I mean, for some of these guys to not be in, we need more concerted effort to bring these their situations to light. But there is a petition for Cliff Branch with simple Google search, and you can find it. And I urge everyone that might be watching, listening to this, to look for it and sign it. And hopefully we can have a good effect for him as well.
Is there anything you would like to say to the Raider Nation?
Yeah, be encouraged. I know it's been a long drought, and it has been a long drought for the Raider faithful, but we've turned the corner. We are deep in talent right now. We've got a real deal head coach. Reggie has proved his mettle, and he's brought in some fantastic talent. And man, I say the sky's the limit right now. I think these next 4, 5, maybe 8 years are going to be really exciting for Raider Nation. We got a lot to look forward to, baby. Just win, baby.
Okay, Mike. Last but not least, is there any way that the Raider Nation can reach out to you or follow you on any social media sites?
Yeah, I just want to make you aware of the social media presence that Ken Stabler still has to this day. With the blessing of the Stabler family, I handle all the social media pages for Ken, and that would include at the Ken Stabler on Twitter, Ken_Stabler on Instagram, the official Ken Stabler Facebook page, and then the Ken Stabler commemorative page also on Facebook. And these are all great places for people to hang out, find out about the true legacy of Ken Stabler, his effect on both the game and modern culture as we know it, all of his charitable efforts, the XOXO Foundation, and the like. And great place for Raider Nation to hang out, learn about their history, and meet some great people. So yeah, check out those social media pages and keep the love alive.
Well, Mike, we'd like to thank you for being on the Will to Win. And we also want to thank you for all the work that you did with the petition, getting it signed, and being such an instrumental piece in getting Kenny into the Hall of Fame. All right, Raider Nation, now it's time for us to send it to Coach Ted for the game day breakdown. Coach Ted?
Hello, this is Coach Ted from RaidersAnalysis.com, and today we'll be looking at the Atlanta defense and seeing what Derek Carr has to take advantage of in order to have another successful offensive performance. Derek Carr and Matt Ryan will have a bit of a mental advantage because they'll be facing defenses that are extremely similar to their own. The head coach of the Falcons, Dan Quinn, and the Raiders defensive coordinator, Ken Norton Jr., both worked for Pete Carroll in Seattle and were heavily influenced by their time there. Both teams run a lot of single high safety looks, which means their primary coverages will have one safety deep in the middle of the field. You can see that here. With a single high safety look, the coverages could either be cover 3 zone or cover 1 man. Both teams play a ton of cover 3 with multiple variations of the coverage. So the key for Carr is to take what the defense gives him. Be patient and take advantage of what the defense gives him. You can see in this example, Winston is going to force a ball deep and get picked off. So in a cover 3, you're going to have 2 layers. The first layer is going to be made up of the 3 defensive backs that are responsible for the deep part of the field. They're dividing the field into thirds, and they cannot get beat deep. The second layer of the defense is made up of the underneath defenders. As you can see that here, there's 3 linebackers and 1 strong safety. Atlanta has their underneath defenders dropping back quickly, which is why it's hard to hit the intermediate part of the field. But in doing so, they leave underneath checkdowns wide open, like you see this example. Both the flat and the running back are wide open, but Winston forces the ball and he gets picked off. Later in the game, Winston starts hitting his checkdowns and the offense starts moving pretty well. So Carr has to do that early, not force anything, and just take what the defense gives him. So in this example, Winston is going to remain patient and take what the defense gives them. Again, they leave the running back wide open. The idea is they're going to give up the underneath pass and tackle the receiver when they do catch the ball, but the problem is Atlanta doesn't tackle very well, so that idea doesn't quite work. So if Derek Carr is patient and takes his underneath routes and takes his checkdowns, DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard could have a huge day. You can see here the running back catches the ball short, breaks 5 tackles, and gets into the end zone. After week 1, the Raiders are the number 1 rushing team in the league, which is sort of funny considering how inconsistent the running game has been last year. The Raiders had tons of success with the inside zone play against New Orleans, and there's no doubt that the Falcons are going to be prepared to stop that play in week 2. The Falcons have an extremely aggressive gap shooting defense that could pose some problems for the Raider offense. The Raiders have to establish the wide zone running play. They showed in their preseason that they want to make this play one of their bread and butter concepts. And on the first play of the New Orleans game, they ran this play unsuccessfully and never went back to it. Like we said, the Falcons defense could be very over-aggressive and they could overplay the inside zone, which would leave some wide open holes in the outside zone or wide zone, like you can see here. So it would be a very advantageous for the Raiders to be able to run this play on offense successfully. Defensively, the Raiders could be facing the Atlanta Falcon offense, which is pretty similar to the Saints in that they have a group of talented wide receivers, a couple of dynamic backs, and a smart, efficient quarterback with a below-average offensive line. I believe the Saints are better, but the Falcons have enough on offense to be potentially explosive. Here are the keys that a Raiders defense have to focus on to stop the Falcons offense. Key 1, communicate well on defense. The Raiders have to know where Julio Jones is at all times. They will no doubt devote extra coverage towards him, but at the same time, they cannot just hone in on Jones because Ryan is an extremely efficient quarterback and he spreads the ball around. The Raiders have to know where Jones is, but they cannot become so preoccupied with Jones that they forget about their own responsibilities or other responsibilities. The Raiders defense did not communicate very well against the Saints, and the Raiders play a lot more zone than people realize, and it takes a lot of communication. Here, Jones is lined up on the offensive left of the field. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing a cover 2 defense, which is zone. You can see Jones is going to run a simple drag route. The corner is going to pass him off to another defender, but unfortunately, they don't communicate very well. You can see that the middle linebacker here is supposed to pick up Jones, but instead he drops back to pick up the underneath or over crosser, and ends up with the corner and a middle linebacker on this crosser here, leaving Jones wide open underneath. The Raiders defense has to do a better job of communicating to avoid big plays like this. Another problem the Raiders had in New Orleans was that they were staring at the quarterback too much when they played zone. It is known as spot dropping technique when defenders drop to landmarks and look back at the quarterback. Against an offense that has great spacing and timing, it is extremely hard to defend with spot dropping. The Raiders have to use pattern matching technique, which they did a lot last year, and they'll have to go back to this to defend the Atlanta offense. Pattern matching involves defenders playing zone while looking for receivers in their assigned areas with their eyes. On this play, the Buccaneers fell for a play action, and to make matters worse, they kept their eyes on a quarterback and didn't get deep enough to defend a play. You can see here that the linebacker is going to creep up to the play action, and they don't get their eyes back to look for a receiver. Instead, they just stare at the quarterback, which means they have no idea where the receiver is, and Ryan easily gets the ball to Julio Jones for a big play. The Raiders can't do this anymore. They have to begin pattern matching like they did last year instead of spot dropping, which cost them against the Saints. Finally, the Raiders have to cover Tevin Coleman coming out of the backfield. Tevin Coleman is the running back here, and he finished the game with 95 yards receiving out of the backfield. With all of the attention given to stopping Atlanta receivers, it could be easy to forget about Coleman, but Atlanta has several well-designed plays to take advantage of his receiving skills. I believe the Raiders are going to play a lot of nickel and dime defense to counter this dynamic passing attack, so the defensive line dominance will be key to stopping a run with less defenders in a box. You can see here, Coleman runs a simple wheel route out of the backfield, but the linebacker is so caught up looking at the backfield, he doesn't get enough spacing to get outside to cover Coleman. This can't happen with Heaney and Smith. They're going to have to be aware of Coleman coming out of the backfield and get their eyes on him quick. All right, thanks for watching. This is Coach Ted from RaidersAnalysis.com. Be sure to check out my website and follow me on Twitter @RaidersAnalysis. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if we can focus on these keys, I think we have a good shot at winning this game and starting a season 2-0, which we haven't done since 2002.
All right, folks, this week's Pick'em section is in. So this will be the first week where we'll actually be going against one another for that $250 Raider Image prize. So let's go ahead and take a look at the picks for this week, shall we? The Oakland Knight is picking the Jets, the Packers, and the Bears, as well as taking the Raiders 28-17. Watts Raider is picking the Green Bay Packers, the New York Jets, the Eagles, and the Raiders 28-21. Raider Beast is taking the Jets, the Packers, the Eagles, and the Raiders 27-17. And I'm going with the Bills, the Packers, the Eagles, and the Raiders 27-24. Looks like a trend going on here, folks. Another high-scoring game for the Raiders, but it also looks to be fairly close with a wounded Falcon team coming into Oakland this week.
Raider Nation, that's going to be the show for this evening. We'd like to thank you for watching tonight's broadcast, and we hope that you enjoyed it just as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. We'd like to take this time to remind you that following every game here on YouTube, we'll be taking your live phone calls, answering your questions, letting you give your insight and thoughts on the matchup. We'll put the phone number down here below, so make sure you give it a call. Also, don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button, as it lets us know that you enjoy this content. And please, don't hesitate to share it with your friends and family. All right, as we head out of here, we want to remind you of one thing. There's only one nation, the First Nation, Raider Nation. We'll see you guys next week. there, I'm Jason Smith, also known as the Oakland Knight. We'd like to thank you for watching the Will to Win broadcast here on YouTube. And if you would like to stay up to date for more content like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. Or you can click any one of the videos on the side to watch more great videos. Thank you once again, and stay Raider strong.